Subscribe to my YouTube channel, share it with your friends, and comment your thoughts. The morning sun spilled golden light over the Crestwood shooting range, casting long shadows across the worn wooden benches and scattered spent shells on the gravel. It was the kind of place where seasoned shooters came to test their skills, and on this day, the air was thick with anticipation for the regional marksmanship competition. Flags fluttered lazily in the breeze, and a light murmur of conversations mixed with the occasional sharp crack of gunfire echoed from the firing lanes. Among the throng of competitors, observers, and officials, a figure moved quietly. Almost invisibly. She was a woman in her early 30s, dressed plainly, blending into the muted backdrop of browns and greys. Her clothes were functional but worn, the kind of outfit that didn't draw attention or invite questions. Her hair was pulled back into a tight braid, strands escaping to frame a face etched with faint lines that spoke of hardships endured far beyond her years. No one really noticed her at first. She wasn't the type to command attention. Her shoulders carried no badge of rank, no logos from sponsored teams. To the casual observer, she was just another amateur, a quiet presence occupying Lane 7. Her name was Mira, but Mira was far from ordinary. She stood at her lane, gently placing a sleek pistol on the wooden bench. Her hands were steady, though. A slight tremor betrayed the tension simmering beneath her calm exterior. Around her, seasoned shooters adjusted their gear, exchanged confident smiles, and sized up the competition. None gave her more than a cursory glance, some with barely concealed smirks. "Looks like we got ourselves a beginner," a man muttered behind her, loud enough for a few nearby to hear. "She doesn't belong here." Mira didn't react. She took a slow, deep breath, grounding herself. The noise, the judgment, it was all familiar. For years, she had been invisible, dismissed, underestimated. Today, that was about to change. The announcer's voice boomed over the loudspeaker, calling the shooters to prepare for the first round. The crowd's chatter faded into expectant silence. Mira raised her pistol, checked the sights, and settled into her stance. Her mind sharpened, all distractions melting away. The target sat 50 yards away, a small paper bullseye pinned against a weathered wooden board. For most shooters, a clean hit was a matter of pride. For Mira, it was survival. Her finger tightened on the trigger. The first shot rang out like a gunshot in the still morning. The bullet tore through the air and punched a hole dead center in. The bullseye! A murmur rippled through the crowd. Mira didn't pause. She fired again, precise, controlled, flawless. Each shot hit the mark, faster than most could react, faster than anyone had expected. Whispers turned into shocked gasps, eyes widened. The judges exchanged uneasy looks. The scorekeeper's hand trembled as he recorded her hits, perfect every time. "Impossible," someone breathed. She shot again, and again, each bullet landing with mechanical accuracy. The crowd had shifted. The man who had mocked her now stared, mouth agape. Mira's chest rose and fell steadily. The world shrank to the moment, the gun in her hand, the target ahead, the rhythm of her breath. But beneath her calm was a storm, because Mira wasn't just testing her skills, she was sending a message. Years ago, she had been part of a secret military program, known only to a select few, the Precision Initiative. Its aim was to create elite sharpshooters, soldiers who could hit any target, anywhere, with deadly accuracy. Mira was the program's prodigy, its shining star. But the program was also a cage, built on secrecy, pain and sacrifice. When the initiative was shut down after a scandal leaked to the press, illegal experiments, mind control, and worse, Mira vanished. She erased her identity and tried to live a quiet life far from guns and battles, but her past had other plans. The competition was her test. If she could still shoot like that, maybe she could fight back. Her phone buzzed softly in her jacket pocket. She glanced at the screen, a message flashed. "They're coming for you." Her heart skipped. She knew who. She finished the round with perfect scores, the crowd erupting in applause and disbelief. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions, but Mira packed up her gear silently, avoiding eye contact. She had no time for celebrations. Outside, the range, the late morning sun was warming the earth. Mira moved quickly toward her old pickup truck, parked near the edge of the lot, eyes scanning the perimeter. Footsteps approached from behind. A tall man in a dark coat fell into step beside her. "Mira," he said quietly. "You can't hide. Any more." She didn't stop. "Who sent you?" "The ones who want to keep you silent." Her mind raced. The initiative's shadow stretched long and dark, and it was closing in. "They fear what you know," he continued. "They want to erase every trace." Mira's jaw tightened. "Then I have to be faster." They exchanged no more words. The man disappeared into the crowd. Mira climbed into her truck, heart pounding. This was no longer a game. It was a fight for her life, and for the truth buried beneath years of silence. As the truck rumbled to life, Mira's thoughts flashed, back to the countless hours she had spent honing her skill, running from those who wanted to use her, dreaming of a day she could reclaim her freedom. The road ahead was uncertain, filled with danger and betrayal, but she was ready, because sometimes the quietest shot was the one that changed everything. The winding road ahead was bathed in the fading light of dusk as Mira's truck rumbled steadily through the thickening shadows of Crestwood's outskirts. The small town's sleepy charm was a stark contrast to the storm that churned within her, a relentless mix of fear, determination, and the ever-present echo of a past she could no longer outrun. Her hands gripped the steering wheel tightly. The message on her phone burned in her mind like a warning flare. "They're coming for you." She didn't need to ask who. The Precision Initiative's ghosts were no strangers to her. Silent, ruthless, and deadly. She glanced in the rear-view mirror, half expecting to see headlights tailing her, but the road behind was empty, swallowed by trees and twilight. For a moment, she allowed herself to breathe, to remember what had brought her here. Years earlier, Mira had been nothing more than a girl with an uncanny talent for marksmanship, a skill she had honed in a quiet rural town where every shot mattered. That talent had drawn attention. One day, a stranger arrived with an offer wrapped in secrecy and promise, an invitation to join an elite program called the Precision Initiative. The program was more than a training ground. It was a crucible. Recruits were pushed to their limits, and beyond, tested physically, mentally, and emotionally. They were made into weapons, forged with precision and control. Mira was among the best. She remembered the sterile halls, the cold metal of the training rooms, the endless drills that shaped her reflexes like a sculptor shaping clay. But beneath the surface, darkness lurked. The initiative's methods were brutal, bordering on inhumane. Subjects were experimented on neural enhancement, sensory conditioning, and mind control. The line between human and machine blurred. Some broke, some disappeared. She survived until the scandal hit the headlines, leaked documents, testimonies from whistleblowers, and an international outcry. The program was officially disbanded, but those who ran it vanished into the shadows. Mira disappeared, too, erasing her past and starting over in anonymity, but no one escapes the past forever. The truck's engine hummed softly as she navigated a narrow dirt road leading deep into the forest. Ahead lay a cabin, an old safe house used by former initiative operatives. It was a last refuge, a place where secrets could be shared without fear of being hunted. Mira's phone vibrated again, a text from an unknown number. "They're closer than you think." She shivered, the cold biting through her jacket. Every step forward felt heavier, the weight of countless unseen eyes pressing down on her. She parked beside the cabin, its weathered wood blending into the shadows. She took a deep breath, then slipped inside. The air inside was stale but familiar. On a rough wooden table lay scattered papers, maps, and a small recorder. A low noise startled her. From the corner of the room, a figure emerged, a man with sharp eyes and a cautious smile. "Captain Reed," he introduced himself. "I'm here to help." Mira's instincts screamed caution. "Why should I trust you?" He met her gaze steadily. "Because I'm like you. I know what they did, what they planned, and I want it to end." Reed's story poured out like a slow, burning fuse. He had been one of the initiative's top operatives, but unlike many, he had refused to obey orders blindly. When he learned the true scope, the unethical experiments, the mind control attempts, and the plan to weaponize soldiers against their own people, he turned whistleblower. Now, like Mira, he was a hunted man. Together, they pored over the documents scattered across the table. Files labeled Project Phoenix, video footage of experiments, encrypted communications, evidence that could destroy the initiative once and for all, but they were not alone. Outside, muffled voices and the crunch of footsteps through underbrush told a different story. The initiative's agents were closing in. Mira's heart pounded as Reed whispered, "We have to move, now." In the dark woods, under a moonless sky, they slipped through shadows like ghosts. Every snap of a twig or rustle of leaves was a threat. Mira's finely tuned senses kept her alert, her mind flashing back to countless drills where every sound could mean life or death. She trusted Reed, but the paranoia clung like a second skin. After hours of tense silence, they reached a hidden clearing where a small group of survivors waited. Former initiative recruits, their faces worn but resolute. Among them was Lila, Mira's closest ally from the program's darkest days. Their reunion was silent but powerful. Years of pain and betrayal folded into a brief embrace. Together, they formed a plan. The survivors held stolen data and recordings, proving the initiative's darkest secrets. Their goal, leak everything to the world, expose the truth, and ensure no one else would fall victim. The next days were a whirlwind of danger and determination. Mira's shooting skills shifted from target practice to survival, covering escapes, disabling foes without killing, and protecting the group's fragile hope. Every moment brought new risks. The initiative's operatives were relentless, their resources vast and cruel. One night, Mira stood watch outside the cabin. The forest was still, but her nerves crackled with tension. She thought of the woman she had been, quiet, ignored, and the woman she was becoming. A fighter, a beacon for those silenced. Her phone buzzed once more, a new message. "Trust no one." Her breath hitched. Who else was watching? Who else had infiltrated their fragile sanctuary? The line between friend and foe blurred. Reed's loyalty was tested when a mysterious stranger arrived, claiming to be a journalist willing to help. But Mira's instincts warned her. This was a trap. In a confrontation that night, Mira caught the stranger attempting to steal files. The confrontation was tense, words sharp and edged with suspicion. "Why betray us?" Reed asked the intruder. The stranger's answer was chilling. "Because the initiative will protect itself at all costs, even if it means killing everyone who stands in its way." The survivors knew then that their fight was far from over, but they had something more powerful than fear or weapons: the truth. Weeks later, the survivors executed their plan. The data leaked across the internet like wildfire. Investigations ignited worldwide. Public outcry forced governments to act. Mira watched the news from a remote cabin, the weight on her chest easing for the first time in years. She wasn't just a weapon anymore. She was a symbol of resilience, courage, and the fight for freedom. The road ahead remained uncertain, but Mira's resolve was stronger than ever. The quiet woman who once faded into the background had shattered expectations, broken silence, and ignited change. Her story was no longer about survival. It was about hope. The winter wind swept through the narrow streets of Crestwood like a ghostly whisper, carrying with it the chill of secrets buried deep beneath layers of silence. Mira sat by the cracked window of a small, rented apartment, her eyes scanning the headlines on her cracked laptop screen. The revelations from the leaked initiative files had sent shockwaves across the country. Government officials were scrambling, investigations had been launched, and the world's gaze was suddenly fixed on the shadows where the Precision Initiative had thrived. But for Mira, the war was far from over. She knew the initiative was wounded, but not dead. They were adapting, shifting their tactics like a predator stalking its prey through the fog. Her phone buzzed again, a jarring break in the quiet. She hesitated, fingers trembling as she answered. "It's Reed," came the low voice she had come to trust. "They've found a new way to reach you. They've deployed operatives in the city. You need to be careful." Mira's breath hitched. The safe havens she had counted on were becoming traps. Even the people she thought she could trust were starting to feel like strangers. Reed and the others had relocated to a discreet location outside the city. They believed that distance might buy them time to gather evidence, time to plan their next move, time to survive. But Mira felt the walls closing in. The apartment felt smaller every day. Every shadow, every stranger passing by was a potential threat. The paranoia she had long buried crept back with vengeance. Yet amid the tension, there were moments of clarity, a glimpse of the person she was before the initiative, before the lies, before the hunt. One evening, Mira found herself walking the empty streets under a pale moonlight, the city's distant hum a lullaby for the restless. She paused by a small park bench and allowed herself a rare moment of vulnerability. The cool night air filled her lungs, and for a heartbeat, the weight of her burdens lifted, but the moment shattered when a voice whispered from the darkness, "You can't run from this." Mira spun, pistol drawn before recognition softened her stance. "Lila," she breathed. Her closest ally from the initiative emerged, face pale and eyes haunted. "They're everywhere," Lila said. "We're running out of time." Together, they returned to Reed's hideout, where the group was strategizing their next steps. The leaked documents had revealed the initiative's biggest secret yet, a plan to recruit and control a new generation of operatives, far more dangerous and deeply embedded in society. "It's bigger than we thought," Reed admitted grimly. "They're rebuilding." Mira felt a chill. The enemy wasn't just out there in the shadows. It was becoming part of the fabric of everyday life. Days later, the group decided to send Mira on a risky mission, infiltrate one of the initiative's covert training facilities rumored to be operating under the guise of a private security company. Her heart pounded as she prepared, donning a disguise and reviewing files Reed had acquired. She knew the risks. If she was caught, it would mean more than just capture. It would mean becoming a pawn in a game she desperately wanted to end. But she was ready. The morning of the mission dawned cold and grey. Mira's truck merged into the flow of traffic, blending seamlessly into the bustling cityscape. The facility was a stark concrete building, imposing and sterile, surrounded by high fences and guarded gates. She slipped inside under the pretense of a job interview, a chance to observe, to gather intel, and if possible, to sabotage. Inside, the atmosphere was suffocating. Young recruits trained relentlessly, their faces blank masks of obedience. The drills were brutal, pushing physical and psychological limits. Mira felt a surge of anger and sadness. These were the new victims, children molded into weapons. She managed to access a restricted computer terminal, downloading files detailing the initiative's latest experiments. neurological implants designed to suppress free will, turning soldiers into perfect, obedient machines. Her hands shook as she copied the data onto a flash drive. Every second counted. Suddenly, footsteps approached. "Hey, you're not supposed to be here!" Mira's heart slammed against her ribs as she bolted, weaving through narrow corridors, alarms blaring behind her. The chase was fierce. Security forces closed in, their footsteps thunderous on cold tile floors. Mira's breath was ragged, adrenaline flooding her veins as she navigated emergency exits and fire escapes. Finally, she burst into the daylight, lungs burning. She sprinted toward her truck, the flash drive clenched tightly in her fist. Behind her, the shouts faded as she sped away, the city blurring past her window. Back at the safe house, the group pored over the new evidence. The truth was undeniable and horrifying. The initiative was preparing to unleash a new generation of mind-controlled soldiers, their control deeper and more insidious than ever before. Mira felt the full weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. They had the proof, but now they needed to act, and fast. Plans were made for a public exposé, coordinated with trusted journalists and human rights organizations. It was a gamble, but one they had to take. As the days passed, Mira's nights were restless. Her dreams were haunted by memories of training, of friends lost, of the life stolen from her, but she also dreamed of freedom, of a world where her skills weren't a curse, but a choice. One evening, as she sat alone watching the sunset bleed into the horizon, her phone buzzed with a new message. "They know where you are. Be ready." She steeled herself. The final battle was looming. In the weeks that followed, the initiative's operatives closed in, their tactics growing desperate and dangerous. But Mira and her allies were ready. They coordinated with law enforcement and activists, revealing the initiative's network piece by piece. Mira stood tall amid the chaos, a symbol of defiance, of hope. When the crackdown finally came, it was swift and decisive. The initiative's leaders were arrested, their programs dismantled, but the scars remained. Mira knew the fight for justice was far from over. Healing would take time. As the sun rose on a new day, Mira felt a quiet strength within her. The woman, who had been ignored, hunted, and silenced, had broken free. Her story was no longer about shadows and secrets. It was about light. The dawn broke over Crestwood with a fragile light, casting long shadows through the quiet streets. Mira stood at the edge of the forest, the air crisp and cool against her skin, a calm before the inevitable storm. The journey had been long, filled with fear, loss, and moments of unbearable pain. But now she faced the final chapter. After the initiative's network had been exposed and many operatives arrested, the battle had shifted. What remained was a scattered but dangerous group of zealots still willing to fight, to protect their secrets with any means necessary. Mira knew the fight was not over. Not yet. But she was ready. Inside a small community center, transformed into a safe haven for survivors and whistleblowers, Mira gathered with Reed, Lila, and others who had risked everything to bring the initiative down. The atmosphere was heavy, the weight of recent victories mingling with the uncertainty of what lay ahead. "We have to stay vigilant," Reed reminded the group, voice steady but wary. "There are still pockets of resistance. They won't go quietly." Mira nodded, her thoughts drifting back to the countless faces she had seen. The recruits forced into submission, the families torn apart, the lives changed forever. Their pain fueled her resolve. But amid the darkness, she felt a new light. Hope. The weeks that followed were a blur of activity. Mira threw herself into helping survivors rebuild their lives, offering support and sharing her story to inspire courage. She worked closely with journalists and human rights organizations, ensuring the truth about the initiative was heard worldwide. Her name became a symbol, a quiet woman who refused to be broken. Yet, even with justice served and the initiative dismantled, healing was not immediate. One night, Mira found herself alone in the community center's garden, the stars above a scattered tapestry of silver. Her mind wandered back to her childhood, to the simple joys that once defined her, the warmth of her mother's smile, the scent of pine after rain, the thrill of a perfect shot at a distant target. Tears welled up, unbidden but welcome. They were not just tears of sorrow, but of release, of survival, and of the possibility of peace. A sudden knock at the door startled her. Reed stepped inside, his expression softening as he approached. "You're not alone," he said quietly. Mira smiled, the weight of loneliness lifting just a little. Together they spoke late into the night about the future, about rebuilding, about reclaiming the parts of themselves stolen by the initiative. In the months that followed, Mira found new purpose. She began training others, not to become soldiers or weapons, but to reclaim their strength, to learn skills that would protect and empower them in a world that often felt uncertain. Her shooting range was no longer a place of silence and suspicion, but of laughter, encouragement, and healing. Among her students were former recruits, civilians seeking self-defense, and even children who needed a safe place to grow. Mira's quiet determination inspired those around her. One afternoon, a letter arrived. Handwritten, the script familiar. It was from an old friend from the initiative, someone thought lost. The letter spoke of forgiveness, of understanding, and the possibility of reconciliation. Mira read it again and again. Her heart heavy but hopeful. Could the past truly be laid to rest? The answer came slowly, in small moments. Mira met with the friend in a quiet cafe, their conversation tentative but sincere. They spoke of mistakes made and the desire to make amends. It was not easy. Trust was fragile, but it was a start. As the seasons changed, Mira's life transformed. She embraced love and friendship, rebuilding bonds that the initiative had tried to sever. Her story spread beyond Crestwood, touching lives and inspiring change, and yet she remained humble, always remembering the woman she once was and the woman she had become. On a clear spring morning, Mira stood at the shooting range, the sun warming her face. Around her, students practiced with focused determination. She took a deep breath, raised her rifle, and took aim. Not at a target, but at the future she was forging. The shot rang out, clear and true. It was a symbol of redemption, a declaration that no matter the darkness, light could always be found. And so Mira's story ended, not with silence or fear, but with strength, hope, and the promise of new beginnings. She was no longer just a quiet woman at the range. She was a survivor, a leader and a beacon of resilience. The end